Hello, my name is Salma and welcome to my channel. If you would like to book a personal reading, you can contact me at tattoosandtarot@gmail.com, or you can look up my personal website, which is tattoosandtarot.com, and you can see what other services I have to offer with regard to readings. In any case, I hope you enjoy your monthly Taroscope reading, and any questions that you have, feel free to message me. All right, have a good one. Bye. Hello, Geminis. How are you? Sorry, your July 2017 reading is late, basically at the end of the month. I've been balancing a lot of stuff, and it's my first month doing this, and I started kind of late in the month and kind of messed up. So next month, August, I planned it out. I have like a whole time management chart of how I'm gonna do each video and when it's gonna happen, and so don't worry, all of your videos will be up within the first week of August, just in time for the full moon and the new moon. Because we're basically now in like new moon and Leo territory. So yeah, again, sorry. And actually, doing these videos has given me a newfound respect and appreciation for those YouTubers that I've been following for a while that do tarot card readings online. And I appreciate you all. And a couple of my favorites are Butterfly to Light and the Quietest Revolution, and International Tarot. Y'all are awesome, and y'all kind of inspired me to step out and do this on my own and do it myself. So and I'll put their links to their pages in either above this part of the screen here and in the description box below. And so and also, if you haven't had the chance to like thank your favorite YouTuber, I would definitely take the time to go out and do that and show them some love, because it is hard work to post these readings and do the readings themselves in the midst of working full time. Maybe you got kids, maybe you're trying to fulfill other passions, you've got self-care stuff, personal stuff to handle. So it's a lot. So definitely show, your YouTubers some love if you get the chance to. So Gemini, what is going on with Gemini? Gemini, y'all, as an Aquarius, as a fellow air sign, I get y'all on, I understand, right? Like the kind of the back and forth motion that wind, air can sometimes make between one extreme to another, right? One minute you're standing outside, it's a calm, nice, very, very light breeze, and all of a sudden a gust of wind can come out of nowhere, right? So it's just, wind is this very kind of flippant, unpredictable element in general. And so being an Aquarius and being a fellow air sign to Geminis, I understand that. But me being somebody personally who doesn't have a lot of Gemini or Mercury placements in her chart, Mercury aspects, sometimes... And it's not so much that I look at y'all like, what are you doing? I look at y'all like, that's interesting. I want to understand where that way of processing kind of comes from. I want to understand that, right? Like being the Aquarius, I want to understand things. And I want to be open to where, I don't really just want to kind of judge things. I want to be more open to like, where does that come from? Before I judge it, let me understand where it comes from. And then I can make all the judgment that I want, right? If I don't like where it comes from. I do have the sun in my third house. My sun is in my third house. So, that is, and being the house of Gemini, that is a strong placement. So that also kind of helps in softening this desire to understand and this desire to kind of want to know, like what goes on in the Gemini mind. And also understanding the way that, that the way that Geminis kind of collect information, that having the sun in my third house, I kind of do that as well. And, kind of wanting to apply that information into the real world is also something that I'm definitely more inclined to. But, Geminis, I do have Gemini in my seventh house. Like I think that's like, one of my other bigger placements, a Gemini in the seventh house. And so I tend to, and that's what I mean is that I tend to find the way that you guys sort of do things very attractive and very sexy and also kind of mysterious to a certain extent. I think being in love with a Gemini, you know, in the past it was definitely a tried and true experience, and dealing and having to recognize that I'm dealing with somebody who has that hot and coldness, right? Who 1 second is the warmest, kindest, most attentive person, right, that I can encounter, and then at the same and in the same breath can convince me that, you know, not only that he does not maybe even like, but is indifferent, right? Could care less, right? And so, and having to recognize that I'm dealing with somebody that's reconciling these two sides, right? And yeah, so I've had my fair share of Gemini experiences, and sometimes that hot and coldness. And the other reason why Gemini and Aquarius can sometimes get along so well is that Aquarius really has no problem with holding people accountable, and especially, you know, and me being a Sag rising, I have no problem holding you accountable, if I feel like you're doing something that, you know, is you know, bordering, you know, is crossing my boundaries, or isn't respecting me as a human being or my values, right? Like, I can be like, hey, like, I don't appreciate this back and forth, this hot and cold, or it's confusing me, or can we, you know, come to let's get real about what's really going on, right? And sometimes I think because Gemini is the great messenger and is the great traveler, right? Mercury being that planet that goes retrograde like 3 times a year, at more than any other planet, right? Like, being that great messenger there, you know, and being very fast and quick moving, that when you're fast moving and you're moving you're moving so quickly, sometimes it's hard to take a moment to sit and be sturdy and to get deep and to get real and to get not necessarily honest. I'm not trying to say that you guys aren't honest, but there isn't this really time that is made for like really cultivating and going deep into, you know, connections and relationships, and like really, you know, cultivating that. And that sometimes things can be very fast moving and fleeting and kind of remain on the surface, right? And this also is in general, I'm talking about the archetype of Gemini, I'm talking about all Geminis, right? This is the archetype. And depending on what your moon placement is, you can have a very different, where your sun, what house it's in, it could be very different, right, for you. Like, I'm an Aquarius, some of my my moon is in Cancer, so I'm a sensitive Aquarius, right? Like, I'm an Aquarius that actually has, you know, actually does have attachments to things, and doesn't err so much on the side of detachment. But what's going on? You know, enough rambling. Sorry, I'm like going on and on. I just, you know, Geminis have been some of like my closest friends, you know, greatest lovers, and at the same time people that have just like confused me and have like rocked my world to a certain extent, you know, like you know, the people that I've had to kind of like cut out and just be like, I can't have been Geminis. And but the people that I'm also like, yes, like, let's hang out, I love being around you, like, this is fun, and I'm stimulated, and like, we're having fun, like, also, you know, like a lot of Geminis. So yeah, I've had my fair share of experiences with Geminis, and trying to understand where you all sort of, how you all process your emotions and your stuff is interesting to me. So, okay. So, this was the first card that popped out. So things are changing for you guys. Things are, there's definitely a shift. Can I get I'm going to clarify it. Yeah, I think, so the King of Cups also came up. And at the bottom of the deck, we have the Ten of Cups. So I think there is a shift in what you feel to be, so first, there's a shift in what you feel to be sort of a representation of what you deserve or what your self-worth is, or what it is you can accomplish, or like where you find your emotional where you find your emotional satisfaction, where you find, that fulfillment. That's what I was looking for. So what's happening astrologically with you all? So we're already like well into the month, so I'm going to try to keep it really kind of brief. And I've also rambled about, for like the first 10 minutes. So, there's a stellium in your second house, and a stellium is when there's, 3 or more planets in a house at a time. And so you have the Sun, Mercury, and Mars in your second house. So the second house is the house of self-worth, value, like how I make my money, what I believe I can produce using my talents and my abilities. So that's happening in your second house. And with the Sun, Mercury, and Mars, they're I think with the Sun being there especially, it's like your whole idea revolving around, right? Like, and orbiting around self-worth is changing, right? There's some changes happening in how you feel about yourself, right? This King of Cups feels very secure in himself. He also feels very secure in the fact that he even has emotions, right? A lot of the kings don't have, the kings themselves are a masculine suit, right? And they're all ruled by air. And so the King of Cups is air with water. It's, the mixing of air and water. So it's this ability to recognize intellectually that I have emotions, and it's okay for me to actually leave from here and go into the heart center. And so the King of Cups is actually very secure in his emotional, the fact that he even has emotions, and yeah, and he has some pretty strong self-worth going. I would say that this king is very strong and feels very secure in who he is. And a lot of that stems from his emotional constitution. So stellium in the second house, self-worth, rethinking your self-worth. And also, Mercury being in your second house, and that being your ruler, your ruling planet, right? Like, how are you communicating? Like, what are you doing to kind of spread your self-worth out into, out to others? Like, what are you doing? Like, how are you spreading the message of your self-worth? What are you doing to sort of, how are you thinking about your self-worth? And how are those thoughts, or how is that way of thinking about your self-worth being transmitted to others? Like, how are you carrying that message? And then with Mars being there, also Sun, Mercury, Mars. But Mars, as is happening for all signs, right? Mars is, going combust with the Sun, and what that basically means is that Mars is so close to the Sun that it's beyond the conjunction, right? It's so close to the Sun that it's now kind of being burnt up. It's being eclipsed by the Sun, essentially. And so the power that Mars normally has is kind of being burnt up and disintegrated and kind of, absorbed by the Sun. So, and what that basically means to me is that it's a rebirth, a redefining of how you, of like what you do with regards to your self-worth, with regards to your earning power, right? Like, how are we thinking differently about not only self-worth, but like, how can I use my talents to make money? And also, not only that, but like, money isn't the end all and be all, right? Like, one of these cups, right, represents financial fulfillment. But the rest of them, it could be family, love, health, self-care, creativity. Like, fulfillment is not just a financial. Is not like, these are cups. These aren't pentacles, right? So fulfillment and success and self-worth has to extend beyond a physical, practical matter of I have this much money, therefore I feel X, Y, and Z about myself. So there's a rethinking of sort of, not just recognizing that your talent, yes, your talents can definitely bring you in money, right? Which again is like one within maybe two of these cups, right? Represents financial success or, self-worth through being able to acquire the finances that we need, right? That's one way, right? But like rethinking like your mission in general, rethinking, my talents can actually, with Mercury being there, right? My talents can actually have the ability to reach and to carry positive messages to many, many people, and not just my own bank account. Like, how can I rethink this, and how can I extend it beyond just about financial success and actually look at it as, a fulfillment of my life's purpose, essentially. And you have Venus in your first house. So, you're feeling good, you're feeling sexy, you're feeling, you're feeling good about yourself, you're looking good. So whenever Venus is in anyone's first house, right, it's just like feeling good, looking good, having good self-esteem, great confidence. But, as the month has gone on, and maybe you all have felt this, Venus is going to start opposing Saturn in your 7th house. And Saturn's been in your 7th house for a while, right? So, and I'm sure as a lot of you have, if you've been watching taroscope, horoscope videos, reading horoscopes, whatever it is that you do to get your astrology fix in, Saturn in the 7th house represents limitations regarding relationships, maybe some new responsibility coming into relationships, and Gemini being a sign that isn't famous for commitment, right? That Saturn being in the 7th house actually calling for you to really revise and rethink and redefine your commitments in your closest partnerships. And as Venus is opposing Saturn, maybe if you are in a committed partnership, having a serious conversation about the level of commitment that both of you are at right now. Maybe there's an imbalance, right? Wheel of Fortune can sometimes, for me, also recognize that like there needs to be a balancing out of karma. There needs to be a balancing out of there just needs to be a balance in place that needs to occur. So yeah, a balancing out in your relationships, and it could be you or your partner that isn't showing up, who knows, right? But definitely really taking your partnerships and your relationships, your 7th house matters. There's some seriousness, and it's gonna require, with Venus in the 1st house dealing with the self, it's gonna require that you yourself kind of dig deep and show up for this one-on-one, relationship. And that as good as you may feel about yourself, that also sometimes we have to set that aside or maybe take that goodness and that how we feel about ourselves into the partnership and kind of balance it out a bit. So that's what's happening astrologically. So I'm going to keep pulling cards for you all. So Gemini, July 2017. And, as I sat and meditated over the cards and just kind of asked for some sensations or some feelings to kind of come up. And, I just felt really excited all of a sudden. Like, I just felt like, I just felt really excited about, there was like an idea that I had, or there was just, some stuff. I don't know. I just, it was something that I just was like, yeah, like this is, I got like a very, adrenaline pumping kind of feeling. And also, this desire to kind of want to, expand more. Let's see, can I get 2 more for Gemini, July 2017? Gemini, July 2017. A lot of the signs are getting some of similar cards this month. One more card for Gemini. Yeah, this card came out earlier when I was shuffling. And I was like, if you're meant to come back out, you'll come back out. Okay. And then we have the Two of Pentacles on the bottom. I feel like this, like, the Lovers card, you know, is definitely a Gemini card. And I also feel like the Two of Pentacles can also kind of be seen as like a Gemini card of like having to balance these two halves of self. And forever trying to find, right, like this energy, like this connecting, this connected cord here, right? Like could represent energy and like constantly trying to keep these two sides in connection with one another, right? This hot and cold, you know, one twin A versus twin B, trying to keep them in communication and in relationship with one another, right? So as to not have these, you know, these stark cold, you know, like these two completely different, but to recognize that, well, I have these two sides of me, but they're all connected to who I am within myself. All right, so these are the cards that came up, and you know, if we want to pull more, we'll pull more as we go along. So yeah, let's get going. So, you know, I mentioned before, Wheel of Fortune, definitely some changes occurring, some stuff, you know, some things changing regarding, and you know, the Wheel of Fortune for me, it doesn't have to just be about, oh, good things coming in, right? Like I'm not a fortune teller. I read, I can pick up on energies and I can kind of sense what's going on, right? So Wheel of Fortune for me is, and it represents to me next to the King of Cups, it represents, you know, a change in your relationship to your emotional self, a change in your relationship to your emotional maturity, and maybe this desire to actually kind of observe your emotions a little bit more, and to really just kind of look at, you know, because I think this last year has been really tough for a lot of signs, but I think Gemini, especially with regard to Saturn being in the 7th house, Gemini has had some emotional rude awakenings. You know, at least the Geminis that I've seen in my life, I've definitely have witnessed some awakenings happening with regard to, you know, emotional, with connection to the emotional self, right? Connection to the emotional maturity, the ability to kind of, you know, not just be the fleeting, you know, detached social butterfly anymore, but to actually really think about like, where are my commitments, and like where, and it doesn't have to just be to a person, right? Like, where are my commitments, like, in my life, right? So I definitely, you know, this Page of Pentacles, he's observing, he's holding something, and he's observing it with great value, and he's looking at it not in a sense of like, right, like this Five of Cups is looking at these cups in this kind of disappointed. And, well, no, not kind of. He's disappointed. He's grieving, right? But this Page of Pentacles, you know, is observing these pentacles in a way that he's happy. He's proud of this. He's cherishing it. And so I definitely read this, you know, these first 3 cards at least as definitely a change in how you're viewing your emotional self. You know, a change in how you're viewing, you know, possibly an offer that might have been on the table, or, you know, I think reflecting on sort of where you're at and how you have sort of conducted yourself thus far, right? Like how have you shown up or not shown up as this King of Cups? And, you know, here you are, the King of Swords. And the King of Swords, he's harsh. He's not, he's very honest, and he's very honest. He's very fair. He's very righteous in his convictions and in his beliefs, but he's not soft, right? Like this king, like there's no softness here. There's no, like, this King of Cups still being a king, right? And having the elements of air within him regardless, right? Because he's a king, right? But having that water element softens the king, and makes him a king, allows him to be a king that can understand things and may be able to see the value, right, in people, places, and things. And like, right, like this Page of Pentacles has a bit of an attachment to this pentacle. And in that King of Cups energy, like, so, there's a lot of rhetoric, and, there's a lot of rhetoric and talk of, like, about non-attachment and detachment. And, I recently went to go meet with, this woman that I see regularly, like a reader that I see, regularly. And, I was trying to sort of reconcile, having somebody whose moon is in Cancer, things become very sentimental for me very quickly, especially relationships, especially people. I fall in love with people, not just in a romantic sense, but like I love people very quickly and very easily. And my desire to nurture, right? To nurture and to kind of like take care of and be with family and people is strong. And I was, and there was a period of time over this past, spring, summer, where I was feeling kind of, shameful about, like I gotta stop, forming these attachments, and I've gotta stop getting attached, and I've gotta stop, and like really kind of, and having a lot of negative talk about myself in terms of like, oh, I'm being too clingy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I went to go, sort of see a reader and kind of get some clarity on that area of my life, right? Like, and how to let go of attachments. And she just was like, like, maybe this whole idea of like non-attachment is not really like where we all want to be. Maybe we do want to feel the attachment. Maybe we do want to feel, close to, like, maybe in the attachment is where we can learn to really understand and build the empathy and the sympathy. Like maybe this idea of non-attachment, like, is not, like the greatest thing in the world. And maybe, like, we're human, we're spirits in a body, we have feelings, we have emotions, and maybe we're supposed to develop attachment so that we can learn, right? Like if we're detached from things constantly, then we deny ourselves the ability to learn the lessons that appear, right, from these attachments. And so, and it kind of shifted my thinking a little bit. One, in being really hard on myself for being somebody that is so sensitive, right? And that, has the capacity to really delve into one-on-one relationships with people in a very deep way. My moon's also in my 8th house, right? I got like my moon in Cancer in the 8th house. So there's a lot of emotional depth that I seek in my life. And that maybe that is something that, I really want and do need in my personal life, right? And so this Page of Pentacles is attached to this pentacle, but I don't see it as a bad thing. I don't see it as a thing that needs to be shifted or changed, right? But I definitely, with this King of Swords, while I do see this representing, especially with Mercury being in your 2nd house, a rethinking and a reevaluation sort of how, of where you're at with this. Like, where are you where do you stand with how you not only hold yourself, but like, where do you stand with how you hold relationships? How are you holding, you know, if there are people in your, and if there are folks in your life that really care about and hold you like this, do you do the same for them? Are you balancing out the wheel of karma? Are you showing up for people in the same way that they're showing up for you, you know? And you know, how are you like, where are your commitments? And you know, Geminis being the social butterflies and being kind of all over the place socially. You guys, and I've heard other readers make mention of this about Geminis, but you know, you all tend to kind of spread yourselves a little bit thin. And you want to commit, you want to be this or be seen as this by everybody. So you commit and you spread yourself out thin. And then when it comes down to actually fulfilling those commitments, you realize that you actually don't have the time. And then people are let down. And then that kind of makes you look as though you lack commitment or that you don't have the ability to follow through. When you actually do, you've just overextended yourself way too much. So, you know, but I think this Page of Pentacles is really asking you, well, you know, instead of just like, how are you valuing each and every one of your important relationships and not just kind of clumping them together, right? Geminis are also kind of like collectors, right? Collectors of information, sometimes collectors of things, right? And collectors of like people and relationships sometimes. Like sometimes you all can get into this habit of collecting, you know, different kinds of, you know, like, oh, when I have this kind of friendship over here, and that's like that, you know, like, and now I have this friendship over here, like trophy, you know, the trophy casing in a sense, you know, your connections, essentially, right? And instead of just observing this pentacle as something to be possessed, right, or something to be collected, but actually seeing the value in this pentacle, like, wow, this pentacle, like, it can buy me this, and it can, and it's shiny, and it's beautiful, and you know, and it came from this place, like not just putting the pentacle in the case, right, but also recognizing like what the pentacle actually brings to your life, right? Like, what does that pentacle bring into your life? And I really do feel like this represents how you view your relationships, right? How you show up emotionally in your one-on-one relationships with people. And yes, like, I definitely see a rethinking of things, but I also read this as sort of wanting to hang on to the detachment side of things. And, and I think with Venus being in the first house, really feeling like yourself and really feeling like, yeah, like I'm totally feeling myself. I'm totally feeling good and wanting to share that with everybody. Right. And like in that sense of wanting to share with everybody, like that there can be this kind of like, somebody might get hurt. And wanting to share with everybody, somebody might get hurt. And that sometimes this King of Swords, in his harshness and in the sharpness of his sword, can hurt people. And sometimes, like this king, I'd rather kind of go to this king, right, with a problem, right? And, you know, like I've had bosses like this, right? And they're not really the easiest to approach. And they wield a very sharp sword, you know? So just kind of being mindful of where are your commitments and where are you allowing yourself to kind of be close to people and to value the people and to even get attached a little bit to people, or are you still kind of here, right? And we've got the Seven of Pentacles, and so, and again, right, like this pentacle representing, right, like how we value our one on, you know, and because it's one pentacle here, right, like it could be, like this very well could be the opposition, right, or the relationship between, how I value myself with Venus in your first house, right? The house of self, and with Saturn in, right? Okay. So this to me definitely represents that Saturn in the 7th house, right? Like Saturn, what is the work, right? Like this guy in this image, he's got this shovel. He's got a gardening tool, right? That he's working. And Saturn to me is about work, right? Like how am I working towards responsibility, right? Like he didn't just show up and this was here. He did this all himself. How, Saturn in the 7th house, how am I showing up in being responsible and displaying responsibility in my one-on-one relationships, okay, right? So it's like, how do I value the self, right? And am I allowing myself to really kind of show up in a little bit more of a softer emotional way? Or am I still kind of hanging on to the King of Swords, the harshness, right? Like I definitely see these two kings, right, as the kind of inner dilemma that a Gemini faces, right? And I remember I was in love with this one Gemini, and he kept telling me, and I kind of confronted him, like, what's going on? One minute it's hot, one minute it's cold. And he explained it to me. And this is somebody who didn't even really believe in, he wasn't really, invested in learning about astrology, I'll just put it like that. But he said, he's like, I can't explain it, but it's like there's a battle between my heart and my mind always seems to win, right? And my mind prioritizes, and my mind will prioritize will prioritize my dreams and aspirations, or the things that I want to do, always sort of over relationships and one-on-one interacting with people. And, sometimes that can be a great thing, right? When we can prioritize our own needs and what it is that we want to do over our interpersonal relationships. But there needs to be a balance of how much and when and where we do that, right? But yeah, this one Gemini, he was very like, it just feels like my heart tells me one thing. My heart says, go for it. My heart says, do it, get attached, like just fall for her. But then my mind says, no, we have other things that we need to do. And, this person is not a priority, right? Like this person isn't even on the radar. So we're going to be indifferent, but we like her, so like there is this sort of, I feel like these two cards definitely represent, the internal, the polar opposites that can happen within the Gemini constitution. And again, right, like I'm referring to the archetype of Gemini. I'm not referring to all Geminis, right? Like depending on where other placements are, this dynamic may not really be too prevalent in your character. But yeah, I definitely see you all observing, what have I done and how have I shown up thus far in my one-on-one relationships? And some of you not being too proud, some of you not being too happy with how you've shown up. Some of you, feeling disappointment either within yourself or either within how a situation might have turned out. And I definitely, read this also as feeling as though you could have done something different. Can I get clarification on the 5 of Cups? Why is the 5 of Cups here? Why is the 5 of Cups? Let's see what it is. Oh, the World. Yeah, I think, when I said before about, about my own experience where, I've talked to that, the Gemini that I was involved with and other Geminis that I know personally, and they all kind of share the same sentiment of feeling like, I just feel like there are two sides of me that want two very different things, and I can't seem to reconcile either one of them. And one of them feels to be the heart center, and the other one feels to just be my mind prioritizing things, right? And so in clarification, right, with the 5 of Cups, that yeah, y'all have been not only observing your relationship to your own self-worth and relationship to like, what is it that I can create? Like this pentacle, I have a feeling that this page also like, created this pentacle himself, right? So it's like this pentacle wasn't given to him. Like this is something that he made himself. And the second house representing, how do I create my own resources? Whereas the eighth house is how do I use other people's resources? But this is all about you and your own resources and your relationship to those resources. And I see this, right, as, a reflecting now in the work, the physical work, right? The metaphorical, literal, physical, whatever, the analytical, whatever ethical work you've put into your one-on-one relationships and what you've been able to yield in that seventh house department, right? And some of you aren't very happy, right? Some of you may be, right, in getting in touch emotionally and getting in touch with this King of Cups and recognizing and having this King of Cups energy flowing in, right? And an emotional connection, right? But still but like I said before, this king still has some air. This king is still a king. He's got air, the elements of air, right? So allowing the emotions to flow in, but in a very controlled, in a very still kind of, not as controlled as this guy, but still in a controlled way, right? Like allowing the water, the emotions, the feelings to flow through in a controlled way. And even in trying to control that, you still end up here recognizing that like, shit, I spilled these 3 fucking cups, like I might have messed some things up, or the situation or this person messed some things up, and I pull for clarification on the 5 of Cups. And yeah, I think, regret, right? Regret that you were here. Regret that there might have been an offer on the table and you turned it down, right? And some of you turned it down because you had things to do. You had territory to explore. You had stuff to do, right? But nonetheless, and even though it's like, I don't know, even though like with the world still feeling like you went out and fulfilled whatever it is that you had to fulfill, there's still like this nudging, this small nudge, this small reminder that like, but you still did this, bro, and in reflecting on that long enough, it kind of brings you to this 5 of Cups energy, brings you to this energy of feeling like, yeah, I fulfilled all of that, but I still kind of have some disappointment over what I did, right? And so now we have this 3 of Wands, right? And this 3 of Wands is, and I think this for me represented where that excitement, right? When I was kind of like reflecting on your cards and was asking, the universe to send me some downloads, some, what's going on with Gemini, and this feeling of anticipation, that's the word, kind of came up. And the 3 of Wands really is about, and it's 3rd house, communication, sending out messages, waiting for responses. Maybe you all are getting ready to reach out, right? Reach back out to this cup that you let pass by, right? Maybe you all are getting ready to reach out and to see what's going to happen, like maybe you've already sent out a message to what that 4 of Cups represents. Maybe in doing this and being here and in recognizing that you have some of this, there's a message, there's something that you need to say to somebody. There's something that you need to reconcile with somebody. Can I get clarification on the 3 of Wands? Yeah, I see this as, communication rushing in. This is you guys again, the Knight of Swords, right? Knight of Swords coming in with, what that sword wielded, and that sword representing a message, communication, a new idea. I see it as communication, right? So, I see that this is you, right? Sending out some kind of communication with somebody. And the Sun, right? We have the Sun here. And I feel that even if the person that you're trying to reach out to has, has no desire to reciprocate, right? Because sometimes the sometimes karma needs to be balanced out. And, sometimes the best thing for karma to balance itself out is just an apology, right? It's just, and I see that in the reaching out and in the communication being kind of forwarded, that in itself will kind of set you free, or will kind of ease up on this sensation that we have here. But I'm interested in this Tower, and I think this Tower really, again, speaks to what is the foundation, like what is the work that you're putting in, right? And, and sometimes in order for us to get here and to recognize that, like, wow, I've been kind of resting on faulty foundation, or, the laurels that I'm resting on are not, are not solid, are not sound, are not, based in reality or logic, right? Like this Tower card, coming in, and I don't really see this so much as this occurring in the future. Like I see, like, because this Tower card kind of is coming at the end of the reading, but I see this Tower card as sort of like over encompassing, like the entire, like I see it kind of like this, right? Or maybe even like underneath, right? Like, but I see it kind of like this, where this Tower is kind of encompassing and encapsulating all of what's happening in this reading right now. That in doing this work, right, we get to the bottom, right, of what's happening here. It's like whenever I clean my house, I can't, like, I'll wipe a surface down and then I'll look underneath. Like, it's like whenever I start to clean, I always think to myself, I can either just clean the surface, or I can move the shit out of the corner and get into the corners and double scrub it and really clean it and get it clean, right? Like I can either live on the surface, right? Like I can either kind of be on the surface of things, or I can get down to the nitty-gritty and get underneath and clean out all the shit. Like I can do one of the two, right? Doing that, digging and getting down and dirty might require that we're in rags and we're outside in the heat with a shovel, and we're digging stuff up, and we have to wait for the results to present themselves, right? Like it's time consuming, right? Like, or I can just kind of remain on the surface and not really sort of, not really get down to the bottom of things. So I definitely see this Tower as you getting to the bottom of things, getting to the bottom of the faulty foundation, reconciling the weak foundation that you may have built for yourself that ended up with you here, right? These cups didn't spill over because they were on flat land and they were solid and strapped to the ground. They fell over because something was tipping. They fell over because something was shaking. They fell over because something happened, right? And they weren't secure and they fell over. That's why they fell over. I want to get some clarity on the Tower, though. So if I can get a clarification card for the Tower. Why is the Tower here? Spirit, why is the Tower here for Gemini? Yeah. Yep. Sorry, I have to get off my stool and get the card. Yeah. The Devil card. And this card for me can represent destiny, right? Like maybe some of you were trying to avoid, right? This cup could have represented destiny. A situation that, came and was really within divine timing and was spiritually ordained and all of the above, right? And when we walk away from things that we're destined from, sometimes it can leave us here, right? And sometimes it can definitely leave us here. And it can leave us here trying to figure out, well, where's the next, waiting and wanting? Well, I had it for you here the whole time, and then you turn, so now you're going to have to sit and wait for it to come around again. So yes, one, meaning that I'm picking up on is, destiny, right? Like, the ironing out of things so that destiny can actually take course, and it can also represent in conjunction with the Tower, right? The Devil card also representing, breaking away from, I was looking for the word, breaking away from or cutting away from those relationship patterns or behaviors that you engage in that keep you in bondage to the same dysfunctional shit, right? Like if you're finding yourself in dysfunctional situation after situation, or, in situations where either you or the other person is getting hurt, it's not like, oh, well, how did that, you have a part in it, right? Like, it's not just, the other person, like we all have a part in things, right? Like, and especially in our one-on-one relationships, right? In our one-on-one relationships, unless somebody is holding me down and abusing me and using, force and is using force over me, or is exerting, unreasonable power over me, for the most part, I can say in my personal life, right, that in my one-on-one relationships, when there's dysfunction, when there are problems, I have a part in it as well, right? And even if I don't feel that I have a part in it, my part is to speak up and say like, hey, this is hurting my feelings, or it's not working for me. Can you stop that, right? So, which is not easy. It's not easy. It took me a while to get to a point where I could do that, right? But I definitely see this Devil card as like, there are some patterns in observing, not only in observing your one-on-one relationships and seeing what was lost, it's also like you're also seeing like how you behave and how that may not work and how that may not be, and like, or how another person is behaving, right? Like maybe you're also recognizing like, I tend to attract this type of person. And how can I break free from that? How can I either break free from engaging in a certain behavioral pattern that's hurting others, or how can I break away from engaging with people who exert painful behavioral patterns that hurt me? Like, what can I do? But I definitely see this Devil card as having to reconcile some kind of behavior that's keeping you trapped into a cycle. And also the recognition that, like, destiny is upon you. Destiny is here. And you can turn it down again, but you're just going to stay here, So let's do an outcome card for Gemini. July 2017, outcome card for Gemini. Outcome card for the Nine of Cups. I think that's awesome, and in the beginning, right, I showed you that you had the Ten of Cups at the bottom. So the Ten of Cups is not that far off, right? The Ten of Cups is not that far away. But I definitely see you all, finding more stability. Like, this guy is very sturdy, right? I definitely find you all getting more grounding and more footing and more comfort with your emotional selves, with your, with your feelings, with your emotions, with, with maybe even feeling more attached to your moon sign, even feeling more in touch with that moon energy. I definitely feel you all coming to emotional maturity and coming to standing your ground when it comes to facing, these aspects of ourselves, right? When it comes to observing and looking at, like, well, how did I end up here, right? Like, what's going on that got me here, So I definitely see you all, maturing a bit emotionally. And, of course, this card being the card of wishes come true, right? Like, whatever that whatever that wish is, whatever that desire is coming forth, right? But having to go through this work first, to really get there. But yeah, this was a great reading, you all. And, you know, and again, because I definitely feel that the Venus-Saturn opposition happening in your 7th house, that, you know, a lot of what's going to happen for you all in the next couple of months could be relationship oriented, in terms of really thinking about your responsibilities and relationships, and how are you showing up secure in your emotions, right? Because if you're secure in your emotions, then, you know, this guy gets softened. This guy, you know, the harshness of this guy can, you know, can kind of melt away. And we're left with more of a King of Cups energy, which is a nicer energy for 7th house relationship matters, right? Like this we want to see more in the 10th house. We want to see this guy in the 10th house. So yeah, that is your reading for July 2017. And if you would like a personal reading with me, you can contact me at tattoosandtarot@gmail.com, or you can go to my personal website, which is tattoosandtarot.com, and click on the reading section. And I hope you all have a great month. And again, sorry this is so late, and August will be much better. All right, I will see you guys next month. Bye.